Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Time for Richard and me to go into our mailbag again. We appreciate your emails and your tweets, Facebook posts, and the like. But I want to add one caveat. One of you submitted an email with 14 separate questions in it, some of which were highly specific to your individual situation. We'll address some of those, but going line by line through an entire email is not what this show is about. We want to answer questions from a variety of listeners about a variety of gambling subjects. So let's take the first one. The listener says, let's say I play blackjack but don't count. I play perfect basic strategy. I know this is theoretical. And the house edge is approximately 0.47%. Got that number from Wizard of Odds, Las Vegas 3-2 game. Playing 6 hours at $100 a hand, averaging 70 hands per hour, assumes I'm wagering $42,000 with a theoretical loss of $200. If the casino assumes a loss of 2%, they will comp me $840 or RFB. This is a discussion with a friend. My point is that the math works, except that it doesn't take into account gambler's ruin or bankroll, since there could be large swings with the punt that the punter cannot typically withstand in the downturn. Can you settle this? Okay, this is for each of us will have different things to add, and you're correct that there are gambler's ruin considerations. But before you consider the math itself doesn't work. You will indeed earn $840 in theoretical for playing $42,000 coin in at 2% rate. But this does not mean the casino will give you $840 in goodies. The $840 is what the casino expects to earn, and they do not give you all of that back. They will give you some percentage of that, perhaps 10%, perhaps so much, perhaps another number, based on a number of factors. Areas with a lot of competition tend to give a higher percentage back to the players. Casinos without much competition give away less. If you look at Max Rubin's Comp City, which is an oldie but a goodie, it will teach you how to maximize what you get out of that theoretical. If that's your goal, fine. But if playing with an edge is what you're after, you're not there here. You are still playing at a disadvantage. Richard, do you have anything?
Yeah, and particularly with the game of blackjack, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, they may have considered you to be playing at a 2% disadvantage. But casinos now rate blackjack at 1% and some places as low as 0.8. So they're not counting it as a 2% average loss by a player anymore. So yeah, and as Bob pointed out, first they take the theoretical win and then they give you some percentage of that back. So and yes, the percentage has been getting lower and lower and lower, especially in Las Vegas on the Strip.
All right. Another question. Hi, guys. Love the show. I was wondering if you could talk about online gambling and how to take advantage of promotions, easy stuff like calculating expected value, to things like loss rebates, when it's good to increase variance, match betting, stuff like that. Thank you. See you soon. Richard, this is yours.
Yeah, well, we don't talk about this much on the show, mainly because online gambling isn't really prevalent in the United States right now. But some of the questions that you're asking are actually quite complicated. But I would recommend there is an app called a little program called Bonus Chum, and you can plug in what game you're playing, whether it's a slot machine or blackjack or whatever it is. You plug in the amount of the bonus, the type of bonus, the wagering requirements involved, and it can tell you basically what it's worth given different strategies of play. So that's the one thing I can point you to. You know, a lot of times the bonuses in the past were so big that it didn't really matter how you played it. I mean, you were still going to have a big edge. But as things have tightened over the years, the bonuses have gotten thinner and thinner because of the amount of the wagering requirements and stuff. So that's one tool that can help you out with some of those things.
Can you spell that, please, bonus chum?
Yeah, it's bonus, B-O-N-U-S, chum, C-H-U-M. And if you just Google bonus chum, it'll pop up and you'll be able to download it.
All right. Another question, another listener. Why don't you guys talk about Baccarat for a change? I enjoy the show, but I'm tired of just poker and blackjack. You're on again, Richard.
You don't have a lot to say about Baccarat, Bob?
I don't.
So the reason that we don't talk much about Baccarat is that there is not a lot to talk about. Yes, Baccarat can be beat under specific circumstances. Counting cards is not one of them. Thorpe first sort of looked at this back 40 years ago or so, or 50. James Grosjean wrote pretty definitively about it in Exhibit CAA, showing why counting cards is not a viable option, although you can actually squeak out a very tiny edge. But people do beat Baccarat mostly through side bets. So back 40, 50 years ago, they were paying too much on the tie bet, which is a side bet on Baccarat, and people were able to exploit that. And so these days, they're constantly trying to add more revenue to Baccarat tables, so they're constantly trying to come up with additional side bets, and some of those can sometimes be exploited. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot to talk about with Baccarat, and that's why we don't discuss it very often. So yes, it can be beat under the right circumstances, but there's not really a lot of interesting discussion to be had about it.
So is Exhibit CAA the best place to find out how you beat these side bets in Baccarat, if you can possibly get that book?
No. Exhibit CAA kind of gives you all the math on why counting cards at Baccarat is not a viable option. The side bets, basically, you're going to have to analyze yourself as they pop up, or have a math guy that you can go to who can analyze it. I mean, the good thing is that the nature of the game of Baccarat, analyzing those side bets is pretty simple. But no, there is no resource I know of that's going to analyze them for you.
All right. Another question. This guy says, my father-in-law is going to Vegas soon. He wants to keep his diamond status with Caesars and asked me what video poker game he should play. His intention is, of course, to spend as little as possible, knows that variance is variance, and that he may lose. He typically plays quarters, sometimes 50-cent games, but he'll move up if it makes sense. He's got 2 trips planned, probably 7 to 10 days total, and 2 players, husband and wife, will probably play the same card. Not sure if this is frowned on. I don't know what to tell him. My gut tells me lots of hands, like maybe 100 play at 9-6 jacks or better. Good luck at finding that in Caesars Las Vegas. But sure, there's no such thing at Harris, where they'll stay. Any tips, thoughts, ideas? He won't like seeing thousands going away quickly. He has friends who don't mind playing big on his card, but this isn't going to happen. All right. Caesars Properties in Las Vegas has very tight pay schedules at video poker for low stakes, especially compared to the local casinos such as South Point. But if a total rewards diamond cards is the goal, you got to do that at Caesars Properties, although you certainly don't have to do it in Las Vegas. Husband and wife playing on the same card side by side is not a problem at Caesars Properties. To reach diamond status, you need 15,000 tier credits. At the video poker games your father-in-law will be playing, this means $150,000 coin in. There are, however, tier credit bonuses. If you earn 500 tier credits in a day, which is $5,000 coin in, you get a 125 tier credit bonus, which is nice but essentially worthless. If you earn 1,000 tier credits in a day, $10,000, you get a 1,000 tier credit bonus. The latter bonus means that if he only has to play $75,000 coin in if he plays $10,000 a day for 7 days and somewhere plays an extra $5,000. Even for quarter players, since there's two people, this is feasible. Do not stop at less than 10,000 coin in per day, no matter what your score is, as that will greatly increase the total amount you must play. Check out the website, vpfree2.com, for the various Caesars properties, and it'll tell you the best games at all the casinos. The website does not list games below 98%, and many of the Caesars properties here do not have quarter games that qualify to be mentioned. If he ends up playing $75,000 coin in on a 98% game, and he plays perfectly, which is a very big if, especially if there's two separate people who must play competently to make this work, his expected loss is $1,500 to get that diamond card. Is a diamond card worth that much to him? If he could squeeze in $25,000 coin in it per day, he'll get a larger tier credit bonus, so it'll only take him 2 days to get diamond. At the same 98% game, it'll cost him $1,000 to do it that way instead of $1,500. And he can actually have better games at the dollar level. They have numerous 98.45% jacks or better machines for dollars at the properties, so that'll reduce his expected loss even more. All right, Richard, do you have any comment on any of this?
Seems like a lot to pay for a diamond card.
It does. It does. If you play in the World Series of poker, the diamond card is useful. But
yeah, it's almost essential, right? I mean,
yeah, there are other venues across the country where they have somewhat better games in at Caesars properties. And if you check out VP Free 2, you'll find them. But video poker in Las Vegas Caesars properties, that's not their strong point. It's for the players. All right, let's do another question that's going to be strictly for Richard. And somebody wants to know about Ultimate Texas Hold'em. And why don't we talk about it? Richard.
Well, again, there's not much to talk about. Ultimate Texas Hold'em is a carnival game. Like many carnival games, under the right conditions, it can be beat. It's a very complicated strategy that really takes some time to learn. And, these types of games are cyclical, and currently whole card games, I would say, have been sort of on the downswing just because a lot of players started playing whole card games, especially carnival games, because there were some games that were very easy to play with very high edges, and so lots of players just got in and started playing. And those games kind of dried up, and the games got tougher and tougher to beat. And so a lot of those players have moved on and gotten out because the games are just not around as much anymore. So, yes, that is one of the games that can be beat. But as I say, the strategy is very complicated. You can find it in Exhibit CAA. But it's a hard game. It's a hard game to play. The variance is pretty big, and so I don't know. I know a lot of people who have just kind of stopped looking at the game just because they find easier things to do while they're out there to make money.
Yeah, I think you can get a simplified strategy on the Wizard of Odds site. You can get that for free, but the Wizard of Odds site does not talk about how to take advantage of collusion opportunities and things like that Exhibit CAA does. So yeah, you can use the Wizard of Odds strategy to lose the least if you want to play that game recreationally. But if you want to beat it, the Wizard of Odds strategy isn't going to help you any or much. You got to learn sometime. You could start there, I suppose.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on again. A poker player named Bart Hansen blew out of a $10,000 buy-in tournament during the World Series of Poker, went a mile away to Caesar's Palace, and played some video poker to let off some steam. He hit a royal flush on a $250 a hand 8-5 bonus poker machine and collected some $200,000 and posted this on social media. A player wrote to us, "Was Bart lucky or good? He was playing a 99.2% game and steaming after losing at live poker." Well, the question sounds like it comes from somebody who's jealous or really dislikes Hansen and doesn't want to think anything good about him. Every royal flush involves some luck, and it's impossible to say how much luck was on any particular royal flush. On the hand in question, Bart held ace, queen, 10 of clubs and drew the king jack. From that position, which happens many times an hour, it's a 1 in 1,081 shot to connect. This time, luck was on his side. He had his cell phone handy to take the picture. In every session, we have several such draws. Occasionally, we strike play dirt. This game does return a bit less than 99.2%, offset by some benefits at the casino. Playing in the World Series of Poker, having a diamond or 7 stars card from Total Reward is valuable, and you need to play at some time to get this card. Possibly he had a room at Caesars, and the host wanted $50,000 coin in every day to justify giving him a free room. I don't know the details. As leaks in your game go, playing a 99.2% game occasionally doesn't qualify as a major leak, especially when you're getting some benefits on the side. Are there looser games you could play for the same $250 per hand game? Sure. But which game to play is also a matter of preference, and often the benefits to a player make one game far better than it otherwise seems. In past years, some of my biggest plays were on machines that returned less than 99%. And these were plays where I definitely had the advantage, when you include slot clubs, mailers, and other promotions. So even if Hansen didn't have the advantage, as long as he has the bankroll to cover it, it's really his choice as to where and what he plays. He's a smart guy and entitled to make his own decisions. Do you have anything to add on this, Richard?
No. I think you covered it. I mean, we have no idea. He could have been playing with an edge, or maybe he wasn't. Wouldn't be the first poker player to play without an edge at something other than poker.
Yeah, in poker, a 99.2% game is called a coin flip.
Yeah, 60-40 is called a coin flip in poker. So.
Okay, so Bob says, "Hi, Bob and Richard. I'm following up on your advice. When you caution against making cash deposits that are too big at banks, Chase in particular, I was wondering what kind of amounts you were thinking of when you said that. I'm certainly not trying to do anything unseemly or inappropriate. I just happen to have a Chase account and would like to be able to use it for deposits and at the same time not screw everything up. Before Richard chimes in, what I would do is try to get an appointment with the boss man at the local bank branch. Explain what you want to do and why you want to do it. Tell him you have plenty of documentation that shows you're indeed a high-stakes gambler and on occasion need to make large cash deposits and withdrawals. And then you ask him, does this make you an undesirable customer in his opinion? If he says he doesn't want your business, which is his right, ask to keep your account there for a week or 3 while you arrange a banking relationship somewhere else. He'll probably give you this time. Remember, this is a negotiation. He may well give you an answer like, yeah, what you're doing is okay, but we want you to maintain a $50,000 balance at all times to make up for the fact that we're going to have to keep more cash on hand than we usually do in order to satisfy your needs. And then you can either accept that, you can counter with $25,000 or whatever. He may say he wants 3 days' notice for cash withdrawals of more than, say, $20,000. Once you're in a conversation with him, you can get a sense of what it will take to make him happy, if that's possible, and then you have a better feel for if it's worth that much to you to comply. Do you have anything more, Richard?
Yeah, I would just add that the bank isn't really concerned about having the cash on hand. That's not the issue. The issue is the federal government has cracked down so hard on banks and other institutions that deal in cash. There's so much paperwork and recording that they're required to do, and Chase is one of those banks that just doesn't want to deal with it. Transactions over $10,000 are the ones that they have to fill out cash transaction reports on. And so if you are making transactions over $10,000 fairly often, which for most banks is, more than once every 3 months, and you're not a business, like there are cash businesses where they make cash deposits every day. That's a different story. Chase and Wells Fargo have been pretty bad about telling customers they don't want their accounts. So, I think Bob has the right idea. I remember when I was a kid, my dad told me, it's really important to get to know your banker. He can be really helpful. So, I would go in and talk to the guy and tell him, look, here's the thing. Now, if you live in Vegas, this probably won't be as big a deal as if you live in Iowa. You go into Iowa and say, I'm a professional gambler to your banker, and he's going to go, yeah, you might want to take your business somewhere else. But it's just a kind of a fact of life in the 21st century. Cash is going away.
All right. Next listener. And this was a question, this is the email that they started out with 14 different questions in it. It says, one player and his girlfriend play a lot of blackjack at casinos nearby where they live and so far haven't experienced heat. They play uncarded, but they really hate to pay retail for rooms and meals when they go on gambling trips. They're considering at least one of them adding video poker to the mix, where they can play a few hours at 9-6 jacks or better and save some real cash money on rooms and food. Even though they're playing a losing game at jacks or better, instead of money-making game of blackjack, the comps they could get from video poker could easily offset the pay, so they wouldn't lose on balance. So far, the casinos do not know they're together, and some of the casinos in the general area are related to each other. So if and when they get flyered in blackjack, the casinos will have at least one of the names already in the system in case the blackjack department and the slot department communicate with each other, which may or may not happen. Probably will. So, Richard, you first. Is this a good idea?
Well, maybe. It depends a lot on what you're playing. I mean, what level of blackjack you're playing. Although I would not do it in a casino that you actually play blackjack in, right? So if you were coming to Vegas, you could pick a casino, play the video poker at that casino, and not play any blackjack at that casino. Pick the one with the worst blackjack game, maybe. But if you're playing blackjack if your win rate at blackjack is more than, say, $100 an hour, well, then I think it's kind of crazy to worry about paying for the room. Just pay for the room. But now if your blackjack is smaller than that, then those comps actually are meaningful. So maybe, but then just don't play at that particular casino. Don't play blackjack at that particular casino. But yes, eventually you may get flyered and then have a problem even at the casino where you don't play blackjack.
Okay, so that's in Vegas where you have lots of choices of casinos to play at. Some areas don't have a lot of other casinos.
Right, like let's say you went to Biloxi, right? Or
well, there's still a lot of casinos in Biloxi.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you go to Catfish Bend in Iowa, you got one casino to choose. Don't play video poker if you're going to play blackjack there. Just go pay for the room.
All right. Now I want to address finding 9-6 jacks or better wherever you go. This is a 99% game, but it often isn't available. And in some cases, when it is available, it's assigned a very low theoretical. So by the time you earned enough comps to earn a free room, you would have been better off paying retail for it anyway. The email asks us, how much does it take to earn a room comp? I don't even know what state we're talking about, let alone which casino. These things vary considerably. If you sit down with a host before you even get a card, sometimes they will give you good information about what the casino requires in this regard. Now, they won't always tell you if you're not a member there, but hosts are professional friends, and they're promoted for their friendliness as opposed to their IQ, and sometimes they're not really suspicious about why you want certain information. So you can get it maybe. Then
and by the way, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're just trying to get comps, you don't have to limit yourself to video poker, right? You could just play blackjack at that casino and keep your spread so small that you're not going to get any heat and earn your comp that way. And think of that as the EV you're earning as opposed to, your normal counting game.
But again, not in the same casino where you're playing seriously, because you're going to have to give up your name for that.
Right.
Okay, so part of the 14 questions was for me is, when a video poker player wins a small jackpot of, say, $2,000, does surveillance zero the camera in on them to see who it is? Do they send a slot person to pay that, or do you just get a voucher for $2,000? My concern here is that the video poker player wins a bonus and surveillance looks at all winners. Surveillance may remember the player 2 months later when he's playing unrated blackjack. Okay, so this presumes you're playing blackjack and video poker in the same place, which Richard has already argued is not a really good idea. For a casino of any size, a $2,000 or a $4,000 jackpot is sufficiently common that the surveillance department ignores it. Although I've been at small places where a security officer is involved in all WTGs. And yes, I know security and surveillance are not the same department, but in small places, they just might be. For jackpots of a certain size, it might be 5,000, it might be 10,000, it might be 50,000, varies by casino, an extra signature is required. I assume that when an extra signature is required, surveillance is involved somehow. If you always wear a baseball hat when you play slots and never wear one playing blackjack or vice versa, that might be enough disguise. If your W2G hit was using a card with a different name than what is on your ID, casinos have a tendency to look to see who it is. They want to know people who are actively trying to scam the system. All right, we're about halfway through our questions. We're going to take a brief commercial break, and then we'll get back to the rest of them. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. In August, each week, Monday through Thursday, there's a gift giveaway related to the inaugural South Point 400 at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway on September 16th. The gift from August 13th to 16th includes a South Point 400 baseball cap, an insulated cooler, and a Budweiser six-pack. The South Point 400 itself is the first race in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. You may purchase half-price tickets using your slot club points at the casino box office. There's also a weekend free play email blast. You're eligible for this if you've already provided your email address and have some minimum amount of play. The South Point does this several times a year. So if you're local, there's definitely a benefit to giving them your email address. If you don't want to give up your main email address, it's real easy to create a new one for free. If you're on the list, you may pick up your free play Friday through Sunday after playing the designated amount of coin in. The size of your email blast is correlated with the size of your mailer. The sixth class in the free video poker series will be Tuesday, August 14th at noon in the Silverado Lounge. The class is Advanced 8-5 Bonus Poker. We teach one advanced class every semester. The classes define penalty cards and go over every one of them in the game we teach. You learn the answer daily notation, so after you take one advanced class, you can easily interpret the advanced level on any of our strategy cards. At videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for a gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Magic Deal Poker. This is a 10 coin per line game where periodically, prior to the deal, you receive 1, 2, or 3 Magic Deal cards. These are like wild cards, except they are determined after all of the other cards are dealt, and they must take the value of a real card, which means you cannot have 5 of a kind in a game like Double Double Bonus. The frequency of the Magic Deal cards depends on the game. On a game where 2 pair receives even money, such as Double Double Bonus, Double Bonus, Triple Double Bonus, you get relatively few Magic Deal cards because 4 aces are so valuable. On games where 2 pair pays double money, such as Jacks or Better or Bonus Poker, you get significantly more Magic Deal cards because in that game, 4 aces don't pay that much. All right, Richard and I are back to questions. Here's a blackjack question. Our listener says he's been practicing card counting at home using the Casino Verite software, and he thinks he's nearly ready to start playing in the casino. After listening to the recommendations on the show, I'd like to explore other forms of AP play and move away from card counting. So, Richard, carnival games are often also mentioned. Do most AP players use hole carding on this? And would learning the hole card be a good next logical step? And obviously this reader did not know what question was going to be answered 20 minutes ago. So try it again, Richard.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, hole cards are pretty dry right now. But, advantage play really is about having a lot of arrows in your quiver. The more ways that you have to find an advantage and exploit it, the better you will do. And that's easy to say, but really hard to do. How do you learn all these different ways of beating games? And the only ways that I know are A, listening to this show, B, reading everything that you can find about advantage gambling, and C, probably most importantly, is to establish a network of other professional gamblers. The more people that you know, the more opportunities you will find, because sometimes you will find something and bring it to them, and sometimes they will find something and bring it to you. And you'll learn about new ways of beating games that way by other people turning you on to them. And the more you know, the more you learn, because once you are aware that something is possible, it gets your brain thinking in that direction. So right now, everybody seems to be aware of the idea of hole cards. And once you're aware of that, you may someday in the future see some brand new game and see some sloppy dealer that's exposing a card. And so then the thought comes into your head, wow, I wonder if that is worth anything, right? The first part is seeing a card. Then the question is it worth anything to know about that card? And again, so if you're aware of the idea of sequencing, then you may see some game that's brand new, that's never been invented or something, and the idea comes to you, oh, is that a game that could be exploited by using this method? So the more methods you're aware of, the more you can start thinking about how to apply it. And again, the most important resource is establishing a network. Now, people have asked that. I never meet anybody. How do I do it? Well, nowadays, just like dating, it's all done online. So, yes, you may run into some other advantage players in the casino and strike up a conversation, but the other way is to get online, get on the forums. You'll see that the vast majority of the people are sort of amateurish or recreational, but the people who are actually knowledgeable sort of stick out very quickly. So, look at Blackjack the Forum and get on the Blackjack Discord that we've talked about, that Rimo started. I believe the website to get on there is blackjackdiscord.com. Another place is Colin Jones's site, Blackjack Apprenticeship. And those are places where you can start to get into the community and start meeting other people.
All right. The same listener doesn't want to let Richard answer all the questions, so he throws one to me. He says he lives in the Seattle area, and now, thanks to this show, is aware that Washington State video poker machines are not required to deal from a random standard deck of playing cards. Is there any value in playing these non-random games? Short answer, no. Does this apply to Indian casinos in Washington State as well? Now, I'm actually not positive of this, and I know we have a lot of listeners who live in and or play in Washington State. So if the answer I'm about to give is wrong, please let us know. There's a listener comment section when we post on gamblingwithanedge.com, so by all means speak up. I read those comments. Rich and I find them very valuable, and our other listeners do too. So, I earlier mentioned vpfree2.com as a place where the best games in every casino in the country are listed. In the West Coast section of that website, no casino in Washington State is listed at all as having playable games. I take that to mean that there are no playable games in Washington. Indian casino or no. New question. I saw a guy online selling notes on James Grosjean's Beyond Counting Exhibit CAA and a 96-minute long instructional DVD called Hole Carding and Other Advantage Plays. He may have authored a book called Quantum Craps. Are you familiar with this guy? Do you think the notes in the DVD are worth the $100 price tag? Thanks for your help. This guy's not going to be getting any money from me. The blurb on the Craps ebook implies he uses the Heisenberg uncertainty principles to win money there. If you believe this, it goes to show that P.T. Barnum's "there's a sucker born every minute" quote is still alive and well today. Richard?
Yeah. Throw in something that sounds like science, right, to make it sound legit. This guy started selling notes on somebody else's book, right? I mean, just the idea is so distasteful to me to just, try to rip off the ideas in somebody else's book and then sell them for $199, which is what he was charging originally. I did see his notes, and the other thing is, like, he took the least important stuff in the book and put it in and sold his notes for $199. It was actually kind of laughable how bad his notes were to me, because there was so much more valuable stuff in the book that he didn't understand what he was reading, I don't think. So do I think any of this stuff is worthwhile? No, absolutely not. I do not. And do I think I also just think it's wrong to try to make money off cribbing someone else's work.
Unless, of course, they're dead and you're doing Cliff Notes for college students who want to read about Don Quixote, so they got to go to, so you can sell notes on what Don Quixote is all about. But
right.
Last I heard, James Grosjean is still alive and well.
Yeah.
Okay, a player playing NSU Deuces Wild said something that was kind of similar to the last guy. He's using the Tesla multiplication table of harmonic events. And we're looking at cycles in NSU Deuces Wild. And he wants to know if I've experienced these same patterns of events. I don't believe this is from the same listener as we talked about before, but I'll put it in the same category. I never believe that tracking patterns on video poker machines are profitable exercises. So no, I haven't noticed the patterns, and I don't use the Tesla multiplication table in my gambling decisions. It ranks right there with the Heisenberg uncertainty principles insofar as being useless to me in gambling. Do you got any more to add on this, Richard?
No.
Okay. Somebody wants to know if we could cover how to figure out how valuable a player's card is worth. And before we do that, I don't really know what he's asking. If he's talking about playing blackjack rated versus unrated at the table game, well, we spoke about that earlier in a slightly different context. If you're wondering about a player's card is valuable when playing video poker, well, that's something I know a lot about, but I don't think that's what you're asking about. So feel free to write us back, fleshing out what it is you want to know, and we're always looking for more questions for our next show.
And I would just add, if you're a professional poker player and you're going to play in the World Series of Poker, having a diamond or a 7 stars card might be worth $1,000 to a player. I mean, just being able to go to the head of all the lines and first up at the tables you want. I mean, it's it's extremely valuable if you're a professional poker player.
All right. One of our listeners asked, with facial recognition and other measures such as 6-5 payout for 21, is it still worth learning how to be a counter? It seems to this listener like the days are numbered. Would love to hear the opinions. This guy's just starting out. What do you think, Richard?
I started playing blackjack 40 years ago, 41 actually, and from the very beginning of when I started playing, every year since then I have heard blackjack is dead. You won't be able to make a living counting cards anymore. It's all over. Literally back then they were saying that because the casinos had started dealing 4-deck shoes instead of single deck, that card counting was dead. So no, card counting is not dead. We have guests on the show all the time who are making 6 figures a year counting cards. It's more difficult than it used to be, but on the other hand, there are a lot more places to play than there used to be. So no, card counting is not dead. So it's just a matter of, is that the right choice for you? And I think the only way to find that out is to actually learn how to do it and go out and start playing and see if it's the game for you.
A similar question could be asked with respect to video poker. Is it worthwhile trying to learn video poker these days? It's definitely harder to make a living playing video poker than it used to be. As we've already mentioned a couple times today, playing video poker successfully requires getting a card, and you need to show ID to get that card. Many of the best games are still in Las Vegas, but if you play enough in these games and are successful at stakes higher than quarters, and sometimes even then, you're going to be restricted. Restriction in video poker often means you're no-mailed and don't get point multipliers, which can make the games unplayable if you insist on having an edge before you play. Sometimes players actually get trespassed, but that's usually reserved for being caught playing with multiple cards or stealing somebody's purse or something like that. If you travel around enough, it is still possible to make it as a video poker player with six-figure income. It requires big plays, and then for the next 3 or 4 months, simply go in and collect free play. When the free play dries up, go in and make a big play again. How big is big depends on the casino. If you're picking up free play, this is a lot of travel, especially if you're doing it all over the country. If somebody else is picking up your free play, that's not costless. They don't do it for free, and sometimes the casino picks these players off, and they'll take strong reactions against you when you're caught. And in video poker, since your name's on the card, it's easy to give your ID to other casinos and have you listed as a free play cheat or whatever they want to call it. But I still play video poker. I still do well. Finally, last questions for Richard. Several times, Richard, you've said something like working as a blackjack dealer was extremely useful at figuring out what is a big deal in the pit and what isn't. Now, this listener believes Richard, always a smart idea, yet doesn't want to go down that career path. Can Richard give us some examples of when such and such happens, get out of Dodge now? What do you have on this, Richard?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer. It's so situational. One thing that should be a red flag is if the pit bosses have been watching your play, and then suddenly everybody in the pit just disappears, right? And there's no pit boss around to be seen. Now, that doesn't mean that they're about to come throw you out, but it probably means that they're trying to give you enough rope to hang yourself. So often in that kind of situation, you might want to put whatever you're doing into neutral or actually make some bad plays or something, because it may mean that surveillance is now watching you and analyzing your play. Usually, pit bosses are very bad actors. So when they're suspicious of you, they're trying to act not suspicious, and they're trying not to look at you, and you can just usually tell that something is wrong. And one way to try to get a further hint is to try to talk to that boss who's trying to not look at you. Look him in the eye and ask him some question, and a lot of times you'll sort of know that there's something wrong. and at that point, I would probably leave. Now, sometimes they'll have like 3 bosses come over and all stand around the game and look at it sternly. That usually means they have no idea what's going on, but they don't like your action. So a lot of times they just don't want whatever level it is you're betting. It's making them uncomfortable. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave. It just means, do you want to sit there and take it? And sometimes they'll watch for a while and then it'll just go away. So, yeah, I wish there was some magic flag that, when you see this, it means, get out. But unfortunately, I don't have any easy answer to that.
All right. So we have emptied our mailbag, which means it's up to you, dear listener, to fill it up again. So there's a number of ways that you can fill up this mailbag. One is by emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. One is that sometimes posting a comment at gamblingwithanedge.com, which sounds the same but isn't, after one of our podcasts, we'll write it down as a question for a later show. So there's...
I also get questions on the Gambling with an Edge Facebook page or my Twitter account, which is RWM21. And I do monitor the comments on the YouTube posts as well. So
good. And sometimes people just come up to us and ask us questions. One of the questions today was not an email question at all. It was just from a player I know, and said, "Why don't you guys talk about this?" So we did. Anyway, it's been fun. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.